What is the crack, everyone? It's Nathan here, aka the Rambling Kern, and head instructor of Current School of Combat. So, interesting topic that came up on Reddit a few weeks ago and kind of exploded into almost a meme of itself. Was someone asking about Irish tartans and basically telling people about their own Irish tartan and so on and so forth. It's a whole quagmire thing, so if you want to go look at it, feel free. But I wanted to address the question of, did the Irish wear tartan? And do the Irish wear tartan? And the answer to that is no. And yes. And it depends. So anyone who knows anything about tartan, I mean, this entire channel is dedicated to this, and there's people who are much more knowledgeable than me. But when it comes to Ireland and clothing, it's kind of a niche that my channel has kind of fallen into in some ways. And it is something that I can offer a bit of advice on. So, Irish tartan was a thing, and I've covered this previously in my video on Ulster Scots clothing, and it was basically a clothing pattern. So as a style of pattern, it goes back hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of years if you look at some earlier patterns that were the same. But in Ireland you have the Killery costume, which I'm going to show on screen as I talk about it. And then you have the Dungiven costume. The exact same thing, and I've done a whole video on that. The whole history of this, like I said, is pretty fascinating and interesting of itself. So most people, when they think of tartan especially, and styles of tartan, they think of this pattern on a kilt. And this is where the kind of quagmire comes in, because kilts weren't an Irish thing and still aren't, and in some ways I know they are in recent years. Basically in the past 100 years or so, tartan has become a thing. As was jokingly said on a thread, primarily in Ireland you're going to see tartan worn in school uniforms. Not most, but a lot of schools have tartan skirts for the female students as part of the uniform. That is probably the most common place you'll see tartan in Ireland, or also a Scottish person in Ireland. It is not an Irish thing, so it's not something you really see here. However, in the 1900s there was pushes for it to become an Irish thing. So in Enda's school, which is very close to where I live, during the Irish Revival, which was a period of basically Irish in Ireland looking to find and adopt things that were a little bit more Irish, because the country had become very anglicised at that point, and they kind of wanted to revive some of their own history. And some attempts were made at something that kind of looked like Elena, and people thought it was a bit silly and a bit goofy, and people thought, well, the kilt is Scottish, and Scottish and Gaelic are, kind of one homogenous society, so we'll take that. And I'll show you some pictures here of in the school and of the boys there wearing kilts. So this is probably like some of the earlier points of where you see kilts starting to be worn. However, it didn't really take off. It was more just an attempt at making something that was unique and Irish and was to become an Irish tradition. If you kind of fast forward into, I believe it's the 1990s, I think around 95, you have the county plaids that basically came out. There was a company who are kind of the go-to, or company tartans, county tartans I should say. So this is going to be interchangeable back and forth for me, and I will cover the difference between those in a minute. But you had the county tartans, basically, that was the thing that came out. And the county tartan was kind of a way of selling more tartan to a Irish focused audience, and really to the Irish diaspora. It's not something that's worn here, it's not something that gets worn on occasion, and there is no real tradition of kilts and tartans being worn in Ireland. And that's kind of where this whole conversation and argument went. Now, what I was saying a second ago is that you will hear me say plaid and tartan kind of interchangeably, and that is a bit of a misnomer on my part, but also it's something that kind of needs to be understood when you're talking about this stuff. So in an earlier context, tartan is kind of the pattern that we know. Plaid or plaid was kind of the thing that it was worn on. So when I'm talking about the Killery and the Dungiven costumes, those had tartan design, tartan print. However, plaid was the thing that you saw wore by Highlanders, which was then banned. And then in later years, there was basically a push by English aristocracy for Scots to wear kilts. That's a whole thing. That's a whole huge topic. Other people have done fantastic videos on, so something I'm not going to cover. But this is where the water gets a bit mired, where a lot of people think that you have the Irish plaid, which was like the saffron shirt with the Lena, and that's why you have the saffron kilt, then adopted by, I think it's still worn by some branches of the Irish military for ceremonial occasions. But it isn't a thing that you will see in Ireland. So kind of the long and the short of this is, yes, tartan was worn in Ireland, and you do see tartan in Irish history, but it was mainly worn on trousers, and it was mainly just a popular style of print. It was not a form of identity for the Irish. It wasn't a family or a clan or a county or a chieftain thing, and it hasn't ever been. It was seen across the country, so it wasn't just an Ulster Scots thing. I know some people think that it was primarily an Ulster Scots thing, but the Killary costume is right down the other end of the country, and that still had tartan on it, just a different style of tartan. So in later years, there was a push for tartan to be adopted in Ireland and have a use in Ireland. Never really took off, and in more recent times, especially among the diaspora, there was a push for tartan to become an Irish thing and a popular thing within Ireland, or at least for the diaspora. And that's where things get a bit wishy-washy. So if you ask Irish people, oh, do you wear kilts and do you wear tartan? No, we don't. No Irish person I know does. I've never met any Irish person who does, who isn't part Scottish or something like that. That's not to say none do. Some do, and some I'm sure will message on this video and tell me that they do, but really it's not an Irish thing. And some could even argue that it's not necessarily a very Scottish thing, but that's a debate for another day. So just a kind of quick one to say, yes, tartan was worn in Irish history. Tartan was seen in Ireland, but it didn't have the connotations that a lot of people attribute to it. So if you'd like to know more, or you're kind of interested in Irish history, please do give us a like, comment and subscribe. All those things massively help. And if you want to kind of sponsor my work and to see me get my hands on some more Irish costumes and to kind of test them in the field, you can subscribe to me on Patreon. Once again, huge thank you to everyone who supported me and who continues to support me. And the channel is growing massively, and I really do appreciate it. Thank you all so much. Have a great day, and slán.